And now, the streets that have become familiar to fictional D.I. Mathias's many fans are getting ready to welcome celebrities from the worlds of crime fiction and crime drama. Because Aberystwyth is home to Wales's first ever international crime fiction event, Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival. During the early May bank holiday weekend of 2022, Aber, as the town is affectionately known, will play host to a multitude of events that will offer something for every fan of crime fiction and drama. Internationally successful authors will entertain and meet readers in historic buildings. Pub quizzes will bring together authors and readers. Writing workshops, meet the agent sessions, and informal readings will help encourage and develop new writing talent. And in sparkling celebration of new Welsh talent, a champagne reception for Crime Cymru's first crime novel competition winners. This will be an Aberbank holiday weekend like no other. So, come for the crime fiction and take Cymru home in your hearts. Rydym yn edrych ymlaen yn fawr iawn at eich croesawu I Aberystwyth ac I Geredigion.
Good evening. On behalf of Crime Cymru and our festival partner, Aberystwyth Town Council, welcome to panel number 9 of Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival Online. I'm Nellie Williams, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this event. We're featuring an independent Welsh bookshop at each panel. The bookshop for this evening is cover to cover in Mumbles. So if you're inspired to read any of the books you hear about this evening, please do consider buying from them. The partner bookshop will be pinned on the comments of this stream. I'm joined this evening by the amazing BAFTA Cymru writer, Matthew Hall.
Ding. Hi, Nellie.
Hi, and the adorable actor, Alex Harries.
Hello.
Hi, welcome both of you. Thank you so much for being here again. We have met before at the end of series 1, so it's going to be very strange to be talking about the end of Keeping Faith altogether. So I've got a few questions. I've done my research, as you well know. I've watched Un Bore Mercher and Keeping Faith a number of times. So I'm going to pile straight in. And I've got my first question for you, Matthew. Were you asked to write a script, or were you asked to write a story that became a script?
Right, so rewind. The producer and director of many episodes of this of Keeping Faith is a lady called Pip Broughton. We had known each other for a number of years, and Pip started her own production company, I think back in 2013. And she lived in Monmouth near me. And she asked me, would I come up with a couple of ideas for TV series? And one of them, the idea literally descended on me one afternoon, was Keeping Faith. And I wrote a TV pitch document, which was really 12 or 13 pages of prose. And actually, I keep looking back at that document because it perfectly captured exactly who Faith was and exactly what her story was, really, over the whole 20 episodes within that short document. And then Pip took that out to broadcasters to try and interest them in it. And to cut a long story short, nobody was interested in it, but S4C then became interested in it. And S4C then commissioned scripts, but they didn't do the usual thing of commissioning 1 or 2 scripts. They commissioned 8 scripts. Therein lies another long story, because then I went away for like 2.5 years to write them. And the project had sort of gone entirely to sleep in those 2.5 years. And I think more or less the commissioners had forgotten about it. and then new life had to be breathed into it. And I have to say this, we needed someone else to put money into it apart from S4C. And Pip did a presentation at something called Series Mania, which is a big European festival in Paris. And she pitched the series to a big audience of European producers with beautiful photographs of the South Wales and West Wales coastline and a few pictures of Eve, I think. And she told the audience the story. And I remember her telling me she had a queue of 40 people afterwards wanting to get involved in the show. And a French distributor offered to put up a large sum of money. So really we have the French to thank for lifting Keeping Faith off the ground. And actually they've since remade Keeping Faith in France. That's another story again.
Gosh. And Alex, what were you told about what your character was going to be?
Well, not a lot. I mean, funnily enough, I remember initially, I remember Pip told me about this premise. I was staying with the Nairi in London, and with Pip, of course, at the time, was telling me about this series that she was trying to pitch, and she was telling me the series of characters, and I actually listened pretty intently at the time. But then, you hear ideas and sort of concepts all the time. You do, and sort of I would say, but 1 in 20, 30 of them come to any kind of fruition. It was later on that I sort of had my agent called me and said, "Oh, you've been asked to read for this," and it was for Steve Baldini, and I thought, goodness me, this rings a bell. This story rings a bell. I know that I've heard the story before. Where I heard this from, and then as I sort of looked through the email, I thought, oh goodness, that's what that is. So sort of to answer your question, sorry, in a roundabout way, I tend to waffle. I do apologise. It was I just started thinking, well, how will I play Steve Baldini? And I was thinking, well, he's got a toughness about him, and I find it difficult to play some sort of an outward toughness. So I thought, well, what's his backstory? And I thought, well, maybe he's got a military background. Maybe he's got a special forces, paras stroke SAS background, which gives him an inherent ability to look after himself, if you like, but isn't necessarily extrovert. And I went into the audition with that. Didn't think it went very well, to be honest with you. And then I came out and I had a call then asking me to play Arthur with that backstory, with that same backstory that I devised for Steve. And that's how Arthur kind of came about. I mean, I know, he was always sort of semi-outsider in fitting in and out, with, a possible drug habit. We didn't really know what that was. And I think then it was just through that semi-military backstory that we arrived at maybe he had some sort of codeine addiction, which wasn't specified really in the series because it wasn't his story necessarily. But yeah, I think that's what how the character arrived at sort of first episode, if you like.
Thank you. And Matthew, when you'd done series 1, did you always know that there was a series 2 and a series 3 as well?
Yeah, no, I had in mind that there was a big sweep of story. I didn't know exactly how many series it would be. Somewhere between 3 and 5, I thought. But as time went on, it became clear that it was going to be 3 series probably. I know a lot of viewers are upset that it's over in 3 series. Might I say, it's very difficult to mount a production in 2 languages on a low budget, which is what Keeping Faith is, right? So it's a miracle that we managed to get 3 series over the line. In a way, it's quite nice to tie a story up in 20 episodes. it's not often in television that you actually get to finish a story definitively, absolutely finish it, like you get to finish a novel. But we've managed to do that, I think. I hope so.
Well, there'll be no spoilers from me. And for those of you who haven't watched series 3, I will take you up to episode 5, and Steve has disappeared. And I was quite prepared to go back into uniform and join my favourite crewmate and go and search for Baldini. Such is the love and passion that we've all got for him. Alex, you're no stranger to doing Welsh English back to back, having done Hinterland again with Anaya in beautiful Aberystwyth. Did you learn your words obviously you learned them in Welsh and English, but did you think in Welsh and English when you were going through them, or when you're doing Welsh, do you just think in Welsh? If that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I know, yeah, it makes sense. Firstly, although there was both bilingual, Hinterland and Keeping Faith, two very different experiences when it came to the two languages. I mean, and obviously, from an artistic sense as well. So, Hinterland was way more. I suppose it was way more genre based. I know that Keeping Faith comes under the, the guise of crime, but it's probably a little bit more organic in some ways. And that's not, that's not saying anything with Hinterlands. They're just two very different things. So when it came to learning, learning lines or sort of experiencing the dialogue, if you like, I would say that Keeping Faith was much more improvised. There was a lot more improvisation anyway. We were a bit looser with the text. And so, in both languages, then it was much more, we were given a bit of leeway in how we were interpreting the text, should we say. And, a lot of that testament goes to Matthew, because I know a lot of writers would be quite precious about that, but Matthew wasn't at all. If anything, he was quite encouraging about it. So to answer your question in terms of the two languages, yeah, in Keeping Faith, it was way more fluid. You didn't even think about the fact they were two different languages. You just experienced each take as it came, whichever language it was, Whereas Hinterland was, you served the genre in Hinterland a lot more, your character was serving the genre, and in terms of the text then, because there's so much procedural stuff, and SOC are quite, particular about, protecting the language in a certain way within the arts. It can make it sometimes a bit straitjacketed, and Hinton was a bit more like that, especially with, like I said, the procedural language. So yeah, they're two very different experiences. Definitely, two very different experiences.
Fabulous. And Matthew, before you were a writer, you were a barrister. Have I got that right, or did you?
Yeah, just for a few years. I mean, I studied law for a long time, and then became a barrister for a few years, and fairly quickly realized that it wasn't how I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And I started trying to write, and I wrote a non-fiction book first of all, and then I tried to write scripts in my spare time here and there on the train and late at night and all that. And I ended up finally getting a commission on a show called Cavern QC in the mid-90s, which is now 25 years ago, which is staggering. But anyway, so yeah, and then I took a bit of time away from the law, thinking, oh, I can always go back, but I never did. But I've never, the law has informed the way I think and what I write about. Not everything I write about, but a lot of what I write about. So I've never moved entirely away from it, and I'm still very interested in the law, and I follow it very closely. But I always say that it took me longer to unlearn it than it did to learn it, in a strange way.
And Alex, did you always want to be an actor? You probably get this question lots.
Yeah, it's difficult to answer, I suppose indirectly I must have done. I changed my mind a lot about what I wanted to do. As a child and as a youngster, went through various phases, and then maybe realised at some point I could do all those things if I became an actor. But yeah, I mean, I think pretty early on it's interesting because I know that most actors come via whether it be some sort of youth theatre or coming through a theatrical experience more or less. For myself, it was, I grew up with a father that was obsessed with movies and with westerns and with film noir, and I grew up on a diet of Gary Cooper, John Wayne, Barbara Stanwyck, and all of those. And so, I suppose at some point maybe it just clicked that maybe I wouldn't mind doing that. So yeah, I think I did. I always did, and I remember I must have been about a 10-year-old maybe when I had a teacher who just thrust this part in front of me, the Christmas play or whatever, and I thought, no, I don't really want to do that. And then I did it, and then I thought, well, maybe I'm not as bad as this as I thought. And it's like every actor says. I mean, we're to a penny, really. We're pretty shy people, and I suppose I was reasonably shy in some ways, quite introverted. And maybe it was a way of, I don't know, maybe it was child therapy indirectly, something, I don't know. So yeah, I suppose I did, to answer your question. You'll notice that I waffle my way through these questions. I'm sorry, maybe I'm trying to find the answer. Yeah,
Alex
to answer the question, yes, I did, Nellie.
Alex is a method actor. I remember our director saying that about you on the first few days. He's really a method actor, isn't he?
No, he's not. No, I have to. Do you know what's funny? Isn't it sort of not to sort of take Matthew to task for that, because I know it's interesting. It's like people say that. I think actually it's kind of method now has become code for I don't know. Well, I suppose method is going to become code for anybody that's sort of, I'm not going to, I'm taking my work relatively seriously. I'm going to try, and I'm not good enough to be able to, like Eve, this wonderful Eve, and just talking to somebody, she'd be mucking about, in a good way, mucking about in action until she's into it. I'm not that good. So I have to keep a level head about it before I can kind of go into that. So, but I know what Matthew's getting at, and maybe there's a compliment there somewhere. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Matthew, the cast, wow, just wow. Did you have any choice over the cast at all?
We talked about it. I didn't veto anyone. Certainly didn't veto anyone, and absolutely not. No, we were very lucky, and look, I've been involved in television off and on for 25 years and written books in between, and I've known that in order to get something good together, it takes far more than, say, your efforts as a writer to write the best possible script, or the efforts of the director. Stars have to align, which are far beyond your control. People have to come together, brought together by the fates. No casting director can manufacture it all. And I sort of feel it happened in this series because all sorts of things came together that were impossible to organize, even if you wanted to. And the cast, a lot of the cast knew each other. They had an implicit understanding. I didn't know how the show was going to turn out, but the moment I saw the first rushes and felt the atmosphere of it and the way that the cast were interacting, I thought, okay, even though we've got a very low budget here, what we've got is something so immediate that it's going to connect with the audience. I just knew it would. So I don't know what you call that. I don't know how you analyze that, but there was a chemistry between the cast, which we were just very, very fortunate to have the benefit of.
It was obvious to see that the cast were all very close, and it was a most fantastic advert for Wales, for Welsh language, for Welsh actors. Were you surprised at how it was taken to people's hearts?
Was I surprised? Well, I'm going to be really truthful and say yes and no, because I had no idea, you know, having handed over the scripts, apart from, you know, you write the best scripts you can. But the moment I saw Eve embodying that character, I felt that there was something very potent about it. And I had an instinctive feeling that that would connect with the audience. That was my honest response. But that was me as a member of the audience, you know, not as the writer. You kind of separate yourself fairly early on. I had, you know, I'd spent the best part of 20 years longing to write a show that was intimate. And British television drama tends not to be intimate. It comes from a theatrical tradition. It often is quite arm's length, and we don't get emotional. The camera doesn't get up close to the actors. We don't hear them breathing. We don't see people. We don't spend time lingering with people in really intimate moments, and that's what we wanted. And Pip and I agreed on that, and that's what she delivered on the screen. So if there's any bit that I think that we brought that was new, it was that.
And Alex, you started off in series 1 being a hobo with dreadlock hair, and I did a little double take thinking, hold on half a second, I know him from somewhere. And then in series 2 you then became the nanny, and then in series 3 you were the surfer. What was it like living underneath that wig, if it was indeed a wig, for all of those episodes?
Oh yeah, it was a wig. It was a wig. I'm starting to go, so it was definitely a wig. Yeah, well, it was great. You know, the first series in particular was, you know, it was some really kind of. It was a beautiful marriage between. I mean, from a personal point of view, because I mean, I suppose that's the only perspective I can give, really. But from a personal point of view and from a character point of view, I think it was a beautiful marriage between the character and the storyline for me. So there was that sense that, you know, every actor looks for flaw and struggle, and every actor in any character you look for flaw and struggle, because then that sort of brings that imperfection of humanity into it, and then as an actor you thrive off it. So yeah, that was a beautiful experience. It was really lovely, and especially I mean, to be honest, you know, this isn't a comment about any of the other characters or actors at all, but I think I may have had a set. I don't know. Maybe Matthew correct me this, but I don't think I had a scene with anybody but Eve in the first series. So it was all with Eve, and you know, with Faith, and so it was quite nice in the sense that see how a character grew, how those two characters from my point of view then grew together into that final sequence. You know, it was great. It's probably, you know, my most pleasurable experience on screen. Yeah.
And what was filming like during lockdown?
What was what? Sorry.
What was filming like during lockdown?
Well, I only had one day of filming. I think, because I'd done all my stuff pretty much, and I had one day left. And I remember it was in Atlantic College, and for some reason as well, I remember distinctly deciding that day I was going to cycle from my home in Barry to the set in St. Donat's, and I got pissed on pretty much on the way down. It was chucking down the rain. I remember getting there. I remember going through this really strange set of sort of this ritual of sort of going there in the temperature and all of that, and you know, going on set. I mean, set wasn't too bad. It didn't seem that different because I suppose it was at that period in the summer when things had kind of eased a lot, and we were outside, and it wasn't quite as profound, if you like. So other than sort of getting to the set or to base, It wasn't that different for me, but I'm sure, you know, a lot of other people would say the experience must have been profoundly different.
Yeah, it was different for me, Nellie. I couldn't go because I wasn't in the bubble.
Ah.
Yeah, there we are. Yeah.
No, you know, I was sort of excluded, which is weird. Yeah, and they had to have 2 COVID directors, as TV shows do at the moment. And you know, everything had to be strictly controlled. People have to stay 3 meters apart, and it's all your insurance is contingent on that. So if the production gets stopped because of COVID, have you taken precautions? If you haven't, then the insurance claim won't work, and then the whole thing comes tumbling down. So it's actually critically important. And you will see if you watch Netflix or whatever that very little was produced last year, and it was, you know, a minor miracle that Keeping Faith got over the line. I'm so glad it did.
Well, we're very glad as well. Was Larn the inspiration for Abercorran, or did it evolve as Abercorran and Larn?
In the very original document I wrote, I had in mind a town like Usk, which is not far from where I live, which is inland. And then in the document I wrote Carmarthen because I don't know why. I felt it was big enough and yet small enough at the same time to contain this. And then Pip had made a version of Under Milkwood, a modern version of Under Milkwood in Larn, and she said, how about the sea? And I thought about it. I thought, well, actually, the sea is perfect because the character of Faith had run away from a life that she'd had in London as far as she could go, which is the sea, right? And then having avoided life, all the various challenges of life, it comes and meets her and catches up with her somewhere she can't run away. So she has to turn around and face it. So symbolically, the sea and the coast became important to the storytelling. That happened before manuscripts were written. And I looked at Larn and it looked magical, and it's a confluence of 9 rivers. So it feels kind of mystical and mythical and everything else as well. And Dylan Thomas had his boathouse there. So it just felt right, and it's moody and it's tidal and it shifts and it's just great from that. So many things conjoin there. And Abercorran is the ancient name for Larn. I don't know when it became Larn, but that's why we chose it.
And the cast in series 3, obviously you introduced Rose. I mean,
yeah.
what a cow! What an absolute one.
Yeah. Well, you have to get you have to get bigger and bigger in every series, and I don't know, this is a strange series. It sort of revealed itself every time we sat down to write the next series. The next set of dramatic challenges presented themselves, and actually, I'll be honest, I originally thought that it would be Faith's father that would re-emerge in series 3, and I think Pip said, what about if it was a mother, and flipped it round, and that sort of suddenly added another layer of life to it. Then Rose took light, and then I gave her this name of Fairchild, which is a really innocent sounding name, but to me it's always quite important. Once you've got the name of a character, you've got their sort of spirit encapsulated, or the inverse of her spirit in this case. Yeah, I can't give any spoilers, but the final scene between Faith and her mother is actually what I'm most proud of, I think, in the series.
I can remember the end of series 1. I'd gone to see a friend, and we sat and watched it, and we then had to re-watch the end again just to make sure that it had really happened and that Evan had actually come back, and he just spoilt that kiss. The chemistry between Faith and Baldini was absolutely. It was almost, some scenes, it was almost as if you were looking somewhere that you shouldn't look. How amazing are they as actors to be able to do that and then just go off and be completely different people in other things? It's just amazing.
It is. I'm going to be patriotic. I mean, I'm not entirely Welsh. I'm half Welsh, and the Welsh part of my family actually comes. I've been doing all this genealogy recently, interestingly. Llanboidy, just down the road from Carmarthen, not very far from Larne. I knew it had some sort of resonance for me. But there's something about Welsh actors that we all know about it. They can do emotional acting in a very unique way. And I'd been desperate to write something with a Welsh cast for about 15 years, and it was so good when that cast assembled. What is it? There's something poetic in the landscape in Wales that sort of comes through in the language and the way in which people behave. And I was trying to get at that in the scripts of Keeping Faith, and our cast embodied it, I think. Yeah,
Oh, they certainly did. I was in Larne last year, and I did see a number of yellow jackets, and sniggered to myself, knowing that that it had gone from yellow jacket to blue jacket to the orange jacket that everybody's desperate to get their hands on at the moment.
Yeah.
I might have one. How surprised were you that the yellow jacket became such a massive thing as it did?
Yes, surprised indeed. And I think the origin of the story is that Pip, the director, was working with the costume director because they wanted a garment that would, so if they had a long shot of Faith on a beach or something, and a drone shot from a long way away, that she could be picked out in the distance. And the yellow coat obviously emerged as something that would make her stand out from the landscape. And it also had a secondary benefit, which is a purely marketing thing, which is that when you're scrolling through Netflix or what have you, you're looking at little icons, and a yellow coat happens to ping out from everything else. So it just had this kind of standout quality. But that was the reason it was selected. But then what it came to represent was something very different, because particularly women were watching Faith and associating with her inner strength and resilience, and then associating that with the yellow coat. So people would come on Twitter and say, "Oh, I've got a really tough day with my boss today, better put on Faith's yellow coat." So it became a sort of metaphorical suit of emotional armor or something like that. So, you know, again, you don't legislate for that. It was just a happy accident that it became a symbol of something.
And of course, the music was beautiful as well. So how did Ella and Amy get involved? Who found them?
I think the story runs as follows. We were a low budget show. We didn't have a separate budget for a composer. The original idea was, I suppose, just to pick up some music and lay it over once the show was edited. Eve was at drama. It's the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. She was at college with Amy. Amy happened to be in her house asking Eve what she was up to, and Eve said she had these scripts that she was thinking about accepting. Amy read them and then spontaneously asked if she could write some music, and she did. The offer was accepted, and then I remember I was working in a shed at the time, getting an email with some songs that Amy had written, and I listened to them and I thought, wow, those are, I was actually really astonished that a proper musician had read a script and then come up with some songs. I couldn't quite believe it really at the time.
Well, can I add something to that? Can I add a little story to that? Matthew and I went up to Matthew and I are both fans of boxing, and we went up to watch. Was it Lee Selby and Josh Warrington up in Leeds? So I booked this hotel and sat there in the reception bar area having a pint, and you had all these people clearly there, really getting cheered up to watch a boxing match. To go to Dwelling Road and watch a boxing match. So you had this. It wasn't a jukebox, but it was essentially like a Spotify kind of thing where you could choose the song. And so you had, I think, there's loads of proud Yorkshiremen there, and they were playing, Kaiser Chiefs, and Welsh people playing Stereophonics. There was all this really kind of, pumped up, aggressive music. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Amy Wadge comes on. So it's really quite calming and quite soothing. I'm thinking, who's put this on? And Matthew had this big grin across the table.
I found it on the jukebox.
Yeah. So yeah, he certainly enlightened a whole swathe of people that probably would maybe not have sort of gone for it. So yeah, so I thought I'd put that one in there.
Yeah, again, that was another of the stars that aligned, because Amy's records have sold many hundreds of thousands of copies. She's been #1 on Amazon. Her latest album, Keeping Faith 3, entered in the top 40 album charts and all of that. Absolutely nothing to do with us, but something that sort of gravitated towards the project and gave so much to it. So, I'm just thankful to whatever God's determined these things that she came our way.
Now I've got 5 or so minutes to go until we go over to Amy, who's going to be asking questions that our guests have been putting onto YouTube. I've got some questions to ask you. Quick fire question round, no prizes. What is or where are your favourite places in Wales?
Well, I'll be absolutely honest. It's the Black Mountains. I've got so much family history there. A lot of my family come from Hay-on-Wye as well, and I hope to live there one day, and that's my favourite spot. Yeah.
Alex?
Well, my favourite spot is a place called Llyn Fawr, which is it's just underneath the Balnesh, which is the Carmarthenshire Beacons, if you like, Brecon Beacons, but they're west of Penrhyn. And there's 2 lakes. You've got Llyn Fawr, which is famed for the Lady in the Lake, people will be aware of. And the other side of the van, you've got Llyn Fawr, which is a bigger lake. And I used to go there from camping with my father, or from the age of 2 or 3 years old. So that's my favourite spot. But now that I live in the Vale of Glamorgan, one of my favourite places, I think, is the coastal path between Llanford Major and Monknash, or Southern Down. It's the coastline there is spectacular. It's probably the most undervalued bit of coastal path in Wales, in my opinion. So those two.
It's not a fair question, Nellie, because absolutely every corner of Wales. I mean, this is what we love, isn't it? It's beautiful. It's beautiful, from the north to the south in very different ways, and the west, and the wonderful holidays I've had recently in over in Cardigan. Not the last few weeks, but certainly last summer and the summer before that.
If I may add as well, actually, because I was just on that bit, and I just realised, actually, goodness me, if there's one place I would say to people, because it isn't visited at all, so I think when people get the chance to visit the western part of the Beacons, from Brynhaman, and I think some people sometimes put off because it's semi-industrial, but if you get a chance to go to the western part of the Beacons, sort of in the Amman Valley there, really it's quite undiscovered. you know, it's really quite beautiful. So not that that's a plug, but I just thought actually, you know, the Western Beacons deserve a bit of a shout because they don't get much of it.
Yeah.
Fabulous. And Alex, what's your favourite book by a Welsh author?
By a Welsh author? Oh, goodness me. That's a really difficult question. I'm a big fan of Harris Thomas, but then that's mainly poetry. I'm trying to think. Oh, goodness, that's a tough question. Such a tough question.
Don't ask me that, Nellie. I'm not going to answer that one.
Okay, all right then, fine. Well, I'll tell you mine. It's Matthew Hall.
Horace.
Absolutely. And who is your favourite?
Can I just quickly? I just thought of my favourite outside of Matthew's. I don't think it would be appropriate if I chose that bias, but it was probably a book Matthew's read, Welsh Boxers, which is semi-fictional, semi-factual, by Gareth Davies. It's a good one.
And your favourite singer or group?
Favourite
singer or group?
My singer or group? Does that have to be Welsh again, or does it have to be Henry?
Absolutely.
My favourites. Oh goodness me, singer. Well, I mean, how do you choose that? My favourite singer would have to be. It has to be Tom Jones. It has to be Tom Jones. Tom Jones. My favourite group would be Gorky Zygotic Monkey. Bit of a blast from the past.
Matthew?
The Morrison Orpheus Choir is my favourite group.
Oh.
They're on my Desert Island discs. I'm a nominal member of the Monmouth Male Voice Choir, and when I lived in London, I was in the Gŵyl Male Choir, and I grew up listening to it because I lived with my grandparents who are both Welsh. And I actually cried buckets every time I put my record on. I still put the record on. Stronger Than Steel, I think it's called. I've still got the album. So yes, without any shadow of doubt.
And what is your favourite Welsh drink?
Penderyn whiskey.
Again, that's a massive feature.
Yeah.
Alex?
Again, this is maybe I'm exposed to too many. My favorite Welsh drink. Do you know what? I don't know if they do it anymore, so this probably doesn't help, right? But when I first went to the pub with my father when I was about 18, that's not the first time I drank. The first time I went to the pub with my father, there used to be a pint called Buckley's. I don't know if they still do Buckley's. And God, it was a Carmarthenshire pint, you know, maybe it was only in Carmarthenshire, but Buckley's, and if they don't do Buckley's anymore, there would probably be anything by Thomas Watkin.
Felin Boyle.
Oh, Felin Boyle's a good shout. Do you know what? But Felin Boyle, Felin Boyle, I remember I was 17, 18, my friend and I went to the pub when they weren't so strict. And I must have got 6 pints of Felin Boyle, double dragon, and the next day, honestly God, the sound of the river hurt my head.
Oh, that's great. I'm now going to invite Amy in, who has been batting off questions from everybody that's been watching. So welcome, Amy.
Evening, everybody.
Hi.
We've had a lot of questions, and actually we have people watching from the US, Canada, Australia, of course, Wales and the UK, Ireland, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands. So it's clear that, you know, Keeping Faith has massive reach. So I'll start off with the questions. The first one that we have is from Alice Hawkins. and she would like to know, having watched both Un Bod y Merched in Welsh and Keeping Faith in English, I'd like to know from you, Alex, whether or not the relationships felt different in the languages.
Yeah, no, they do. Inevitably, I think language is such a potent thing. And it's interesting you're saying that there's questions coming from, especially, places across the world that have got different languages. I mean, they'd be the first to appreciate how a language can sort of colour relationships, and yeah, it absolutely does. I think in Welsh, I don't know, maybe because Welsh is my first language in terms of, it was my home language, it was my academic language, it was my home language. Maybe from that point of view, maybe it taps into something a little bit more, it's easy to access to emotion or whatnot. But that's not to say that English doesn't do the same, it just does a very different thing. English is much better to be, the English language is wonderful to be forthright with. And I mean, the best way to sum it up, I know that Matthew's talking about this earlier, the best way to sum up the differences between the English and the Welsh language is probably the Christian cross. The Christian cross in English, in Anglo-Saxon, is two lines, isn't it? Whereas the Christian cross in Celtic Christian cross is a series of intertwined, do you know what I mean? And so I think that probably sums up best the differences between the two languages. English is wonderful at being direct, and Welsh is wonderful at not being, and sort of circumventing all of that and showing that things aren't straightforward, particularly emotional. I waffled again there, I'm terribly sorry.
That's okay. We have a question then from Sian Phillips, who would like to know how, when you were filming, did you film in both languages? Did you do them at the same time? Did you do them separately? And were there any moments where they were dubbed?
Is this the Sian Phillips in Ireland as opposed to Dame Sian Phillips?
I think so, yeah.
Well, I think generally you go first in English purely because you show the crew in English, because not all of the crew are Welsh speaking. So generally you do your first shot, first master in English, and then it's setup by setup then. So you do a setup in English, and then the same setup in Welsh, and then you change your set. So for example, in terms of terminology, get too technical, but your main establishing shot, you'll do it in English, then in Welsh, and then maybe when you move the camera in for your sort of your mediums and your close-ups, you stay in the language you finished in last, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I'll just add
There's a certain amount of continuity.
I'll just add to that, which was that they would flip between languages in takes. So they would say, we'll have another one in English, another one in Welsh. And I was there on one filming day when it was a cloudy day in Larne Bay. And when the sun was behind the clouds, they were filming takes in Welsh. And when the sun was out, they were filming in English because it had developed a different mood. And I've recently watched the show, the first series shot again in French, and it has a different mood again. It's called Gloria in French. And I've just been told that apparently there's a South Korean company that are very interested in remaking it in South Korea. So we might hit it in 4 languages, which is, pretty uncommon.
Well, going global, and I mean that's a huge undertaking to film in both languages. Whose decision was it to do it in English and in Welsh?
Well, the scripts were originally commissioned by S4C, which is a Welsh language station. So Welsh was the principal language, and then BBC Wales then subsequently came on board. So there was a time when it might only have existed in Welsh, on a very small. That would have been on a very, very small budget. It's all about the money. The more people involved, the more money there is to make the show.
And how do you decide then what to include in the Welsh language version, and how do you ensure that it keeps the spirit of the English language version?
It was a difficult process because the S4C format is a commercial format, which is approximately 48 to 49 minutes per episode because of ad breaks, whereas BBC drama format is 60 minutes. So it gives you 11 minutes effectively that you have to cut. And there is no easy way of doing that. You have to film and cut. And so you will see that in the Welsh language version, scenes are ordered differently sometimes. So, you know, it was just a practical problem that had to be got round.
Sounds difficult.
And there's a third version, which is for international audiences, which is, I think, 55 minutes, which is different again.
So Just Passing By is asking, was it planned all along? Sorry for the spoiler I can't imagine that there's anyone that hasn't caught themselves up now. Was it planned all along that both of Eve's love interests would die? She said that it really shocked her, but she thinks as an ending, it was absolutely perfect.
This is a hard one to answer. I hope I'm not spoiling it for people. Evan had to die. I knew that from series 1, but I knew it had to be heroic and self-sacrificial and redemptive. That was what was important. And then when I thought about it, and I thought about Steve and where he was going and what he had done in the past and whether he could atone for what he had done in the past, it was heading towards one conclusion. So, you know, ask me in 5 years' time, I'll be able to write you a sort of academic analysis of exactly why it happened, but I can't quite do it now.
So we have Jenny Smith then, who has a question for Alex, and she asks, did you enjoy working with the children within moments of madness?
It's the first time I've worked with children, really. I've got children of my own. I'm not the most patient of people. But Arthur is, you know, that's the funny thing, isn't it? It's interesting how you kind of, through, I don't know, maybe through your relationship with them as Faith's children, you find that. So I really did enjoy it. And to be completely honest, I didn't think I would. I didn't think I would enjoy it. And that's not nothing. That's no comment on the children whatsoever. It's just that's a comment on me. Yeah, it was great. It was really, and it's interesting with kids. They're the best actors there are, really. They've really got this. They're not tainted. They don't have habits as actors. So they exist, and the younger they are, the more they exist in the moment. You know, they really sort of say yes to all of their emotions, say yes to everything that's going on, and so you have to respond to it. And you know, I mean, there's one scene, probably enough, that one of the because there was a set of twins playing Rodri, and he bit my finger in the take. I was with Bradley Freegard, played Evan, and he bit my finger. I just thought, I stopped because it hurt, and I had to stop because I was like, guys, on my finger, and I thought, God, I wish I had the bravery to bite somebody's finger in the scene. That's brilliant. And you know, he was just saying yes to his emotional state at the time, wasn't he? Which is what actors are meant to do, and you never do. Actors never do. You always finish a take, or you always finish a night on stage or whatever. And you think, God, I wish I'd just gone with that. I just wish I'd said yes to that. And so you inevitably learn a lot of kids. You know, kids. And I always say put kids and never put kids and animals, and I say the opposite. You know, you learn so much of kids and animals. I mean, because animals don't have, and kids don't have that sense of the policeman in their head. So again, my roundabout way of saying yes, I did. Sorry, Amy.
That's fine. And you mentioned, you know, Arthur's patience. Did you find that by playing Arthur, you gained more patience in your own life?
No, not at all. No, I let my characters go. I mean, I'm not that method at math. Sorry, no, no. I mean, it's lovely to be like that, but I think no, you don't. I mean, some people say you do. I think Daniel Day-Lewis said something really interesting to me. Say when you play a character, you feel like you've learned so much, and then it comes to the end, you realise you've learned nothing at all.
Okay, so we have some more questions. This one is for you, Matthew. It's from Alison Hartland, and she would like to know, which do you prefer writing? Books, prose, or screenplays?
They're both very different experiences. I like both equally. But I mean, the fundamental difference is this: in books, you go away by yourself for many months and produce something without having to confer with other people, and so you're satisfying yourself, and you have a direct relationship with your readers, which I value a lot, actually, because I like corresponding with readers who read the books. You have that direct communication. Television is something very different. The writer has to start off with the initial inspiration, the characters and the story, and then you write scripts, and then you get constant notes. And half the job in writing for television is responding to other people's input on your script or comments on your script. So you're a writer and a negotiator is what you are throughout the duration of it. And I'll be honest, I enjoy that up to a point. And there comes a point when I get a sense of, I just want to go away and write my own thing. And I have to say, I'm just starting writing a book. Now I'm writing some other TV stuff, but I had to go away and start writing another book. Ghost story this time. Yeah, but both. I mean, the wonderful thing about television is that you get to meet people, right? If I was a novelist, I wouldn't met Alex and all the others. I wouldn't made those friendships. So it stops me from going down the rabbit hole and vanishing. Actually, writing television. So I enjoy both of them.
And that leads me into the last two questions, actually. Both are from Alison Hartland again. And Matthew, she would like to know, first of all, are there any other opportunities in the pipeline for you to write something based in Wales?
Well, I've been developing a Welsh-based show in the last year, and we're just a little different from Keeping Faith. Alex has read the script, actually, but I'm just trying to find the broadcaster at the moment. So I'm hoping very much so.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And Alex, what can we see you in next on our screens?
I think it's all. I think obviously, we've had lockdown, so that's put that to bed. But funnily enough, it's been it's been about 4 or 5 years since I did theatre last. So I'm developing a play at the moment with a playwright, which I'm not really going to talk too much about because I don't want anybody back to nick that idea. So at the moment, from a stream TV film point of view, nothing yet. We'll see what happens now that if everything's opening up a bit.
You'll see him soon. I'm sure you're going to see Alex soon.
I think everybody in the audience has their fingers crossed. Thank you both so much for answering the audience questions. I'm going to leave you back in Nellie's very capable hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
So that's it. That's the end of event number 9 of Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival, and we are shortly approaching the end of series 3 of Keeping Faith. So many thanks to you all for joining us and for your brilliant questions this evening. And to remind you that if you'd like to buy any books this evening, our partner bookshop is Cover to Cover in Mumbles, and you can find a link on the programme page under this event. Now, as I said, it is the final episode of Keeping Faith tomorrow evening, and how lovely of the BBC to give a birthday present to Matthew. So a very happy birthday to you from everybody, and thank you for giving us 3 series of Keeping Faith. And finally, on behalf of Gŵyl Crime Cymru Festival Online, I would like to thank my panel, Matthew Hall and Alex Harries, and to wish you all a very good night, and we hope to see you in Aberystwyth next year. Nos da.
Nos da.
So